Morning, everyone. We are in middle of Os Zion, in the fourth parak of the first section. So middle of Os Zion, the seventh. And yesterday, or last time we spoke about the impact. We spoke about the two categories of activity. One category was mitzvos, and the mitzvos, we understood that when we do mitzvos, we are tapping into, first of all, we're doing God's will, but on a deeper level, in addition to doing God's will, there are the pathways that were created, that God created for each mitzvah to impact us in a very particular fashion. So two things are happening. One, we're fulfilling God's will, and B, the mitzvahs themselves are having their particular impact. Then he continues, and he speaks about things that are not mitzvos. There are things which are not mitzvos, like going to sleep, like eating, like any activity that we do to unwind. Anything that is done which is not a mitzvah per se. The first thing we have to check is that it's within the parameters, within the limitations that God gave us. So in other words, if we want to go eat, we have to survive. Great. First, you have to make sure it's kosher, right? You want to go ahead and unwind, which is also necessary. You have to make sure it's being done in a kosher fashion. We have to make sure that what we're engaging in is not something which God prevented or forbade us to do. Then we have to make sure that we're not overdoing it. We're not going too deeply into that is mutter, that is permitted, and we are only doing that is necessary for our health. Okay? And when he says physical health, he means emotional health as well. So, for example, a person, both for our physical health, we need to eat, but we also, let's say, we need to unwind, right? So, is that your physical health? No, not necessarily, but there is a notion, that if a person is just, some people need to relax a little bit more, and you have to make a very honest assessment. How much of this do I need? How much food do I need? Will I be okay just eating bread and butter? Some people, yes, they'll be fine. Many people, that won't do it. They need to have some, break. They need to have some change. So, again, you have to first make sure it's not forbidden. Then you have to make sure you're not overdoing it, okay? And not simply an expression of our material elements which are drawn towards that is permitted. And lastly, we have to then recognize and think about that the purpose of all of this is to ultimately provide for our soul. Ultimately provide for a reality where we will be in a good state of mind, we'll be in a physically strong state of mind, so that we could serve God, right? So in other words, I need to eat, yes, 100%, so I have to make sure it's not asr, I have to make sure the food I'm eating is kosher, then I have to make sure I'm not eating too much, and then I have to think about the fact that ultimately, why am I eating? I'm eating because I want to serve God, I want to live a life in service to Hashem, because if we don't eat, the goal, why am I eating? Why am I engaging in this world? Because if I'm weak, if I'm physically, emotionally weak, then I'm not going to be able to serve God, right? A person can't serve God properly if they are in a state of weakness. It's not going to happen. And therefore, those are the three things we have to keep in mind. Then he adds, when a person does this, again, it's not forbidden. It is not too much. And I'm doing it with the right intention. When a person does this, it's not just that it's all okay, but this itself actually impacts our perfection as well. When a person does all this, then they're actually doing what is a form of a mitzvah. Then these actions, is not we think initially, okay, there's the mitzvah category and there's the non-mitzvah category. That's not true. In the non-mitzvah category, if we engage in this world in the appropriate fashion, following those three rules, then what is actually happening, it actually transforms us just like mitzvahs do. Okay? It becomes just like any other mitzvah. I'm putting on tefillin, I could be eating and actually getting schar, not just getting schar, I could be transforming myself just like putting on tefillin, just like lighting Shabbos candles, just like Talmud Torah, right? Ki gamze mitzvah leinu, it's also mitzvah. Lishmar skufenu, to protect our body. V'achana haguna l'shenucha lavabos barenu, so that we can serve God properly. You could be eating, you could be going to the gym, you could be going on a walk, and you could be performing a mitzvah just like Talmud Torah. Okay? Maybe Talmud Torah is not a good example. See, that might be in its own category, but just like any other mitzvah, because you're doing it with that right intention. Again, engaging this world for the goal of what is needed for us. We get elevated. And not only that, but the physical world, when we are engaging in the physical world for these purposes, the physical world gets elevated as well, because it is facilitating our service of Hashem. Right, so they say from Rav Nachman of Breslov, he used to say that some people eat so that they could daven, right? That in other words, they could serve God. He said, I daven, I serve God so that I can eat. In other words, the recognition that eating itself could be the goal in and of itself. In other words, to recognize how holy eating could be. We think of, okay, there's the Maisa mitzvos, there's the spiritual things we do, and there's the non-spiritual things we do. Rav Chal is pointing out over here that the non-mitzvah things we do, the non-spiritual things we do, can actually be incredibly spiritual. So we actually need to be elevated. We need to be in an elevated state so that when you come to eating, right, that's what he was saying. He's saying, I daven so that I could eat. I daven, so I become a more spiritual person, so when I get to eating, it's actually going to be a lofty spiritual exercise as well. And that is the recognition that, everything we do in this world, everything, we go to work, is also, we do the amount that we need to do. Every single thing that we do in this world could be a Maisa mitzvah of the highest degree. And to recognize the opportunities that come before us in all of the physical world, all of the physical things that we're doing them again, if they're okay, if they're not too much, and they're being done for the right intention, could be a Maisa mitzvah as well. Okay.